Okay, so let's get to the more boring topic, which is low code, no code. So yesterday I did a short presentation on what is low code, no code, and that was kind of rushed through. So if you look at our ecosystem, the way we have built out our product and platform, that we have this user interface, right, which often you'll hear the word forms. Now, when I took this job, I did not want to use two words in this company. One is forms and workflows, right? So I will say form is replaced by user interaction or user interface, right? And the workflows are replaced by business processes. So a lot of this. So essentially, if you see how is the data coming into metric stream, it is coming through an user interface where one would go in and put in the data, or it can come from other systems into, so we'll address both. So we do understand that our user interface needs a major uplift. So we have put the building blocks here, which is basically now take all the logic you have in the user interface, where you do the validations, whether dates is within the range or not, whether it's for the email is in the right format or not, right? All those kind of validations. In yesterday's world, you would write that in JavaScript, and you actually codify that in JavaScript. In tomorrow's world, not today, tomorrow's world, you'll do it in low-code, no-code platform, right? Where we have taken the same construct, and what we are saying is, any user doesn't need to know a single line of coding, right? Can codify that using the low-code framework. What does it mean? It's a simple APIs, right? Simple functions. A dot on change, do this. B dot on this action, do this. That's how simple it is to use, right? What it gives us is the amount of code you have to write is drastically reduced now, right? Because the abstraction has been brought into the platform, right? And now, if I do have the parallel, when programming started, people used to write code in assembly language. And today, you're writing code in 4GLs, right? 4th generation language, where you write one sentence that gets translated into 100 lines of assembly language code. So that's the same concept here. That's why we are saying low code. The number of lines of code is getting reduced. But the beauty of this is it's completely upgrade safe. So what's happening is we have the out-of-the-box product. Now, out-of-the-box product, on top of that, you are putting certain logic, right, which used to be yesterday in JavaScript. When you do the upgrade, you take the out-of-the-box, which has evolved, right? You've got the new version, but you have to take that incremental code, right? What is over here? At your service. So you take that incremental pieces of code, right, which is written in low code, and you can migrate it as it is. There's no rewriting of the code, no testing of the code. It will work as is. So that's why we say it's upgrade safe. So two things has happened. Your lines of code has reduced. You have written this in an English-like way. So basically, the end user can easily understand. In fact, we are saying it's an end user tool. You can actually code it, right? And then you can make it completely upgrade safe. Now, this is the part we are talking about in the forms, which is our user interface, right? Now, and you see that animation going around is actually showing you the code reduction. So, as I said, it replaces JavaScript. It's a domain-specific language where we take a lot of pride. It's a GRC-specific, domain-specific language which metric stream came up with. Okay, it's especially geared toward GRC. What does it mean? A lot of functions which we have seen over the period of years that are used in the forms in JavaScript, which we have now coded it back into the platform, and we exposed it through functions and APIs, right? So it's a domain-specific language, specifically geared for GRC. It allows declarative rules, and you can ignore that for the time being, but it's upgrade safe, right? And it can be as simple as an English-like language, right? Now, the other cool thing about it is, as I said, the data can come in from the user interface. Also, it can come through the external systems. You can integrate with the external systems. When you are getting the data from the external systems, inside the metric stream ecosystem, the same validation kicks in, whatever you have written. So that's a huge advantage. So basically, If you're entering a data sitting at the user interface or you bring it from another system, the same validation rules will kick in because the validation rules are now written in this abstracted language, right? So that's why we are saying that, well, doesn't matter whether you're using BAPI framework, which I'll come to, or simplified data upload, whatever avenues you are taking, the same validation will kick in. 60% of the code reduction, no questions please, 60% of the code reduction, I'll get to you, sorry. 60% of the code reduction, right? And other cool thing, I'll explain what BAPI is and what the SDU is. Previously, yesterday we used to hand code BAPI and SDU, meaning like you have to take the same validation logic and duplicate the code 3 times, one for simplified upload, one for BAPI, right? Now you don't have to do that. So if you're interfacing with other systems or you're uploading the data, all of that is coming through the same validation engine, and the machine will generate. The machine will generate the API. You don't have to hand code it. So the same user interface you have a corresponding API coming out of the box. Platform will generate that API, and you can use the same API to interface with the other systems. So if you have your local systems, or if you're interacting with any other products, right, you can use the same API to do that. If you have bulk data which you have to import, you can use a simplified data upload to upload it, right? And the most important thing is you as a business user now actually can read that line of code and say, oh, okay, this is the validation this particular API is doing. And it's completely exposed to the outside world, where you can easily read it, right? Yes, your questions. So I'll come to that. Please hold on to your questions and we will answer that. Yeah? Good question. So the previous slide was business rules. The next slide is, well, now you have the business processes, right? So you take in the data, and once you fill in the data, you want to hit the submit button, the save button, send it for approvals, which we call it as a workflow, business processes. Within the business process, you do a 3-step thing. One is when you are sending the data from A to B, right, we have ways of doing 3 steps there. One is to do any kind of processing you need to do before you send the data to B. Then you do the, updating your table structures and whatnot, which is called the ETL process, extraction, transformation, loading. And the third step is after you've completed that transition, you do the post-processing. The pre-processing and the post-processing is where you would write, because it's a business process language, you're calling that as Embry. Again, is a metric stream invented term, right, which is nothing but Groovy. Groovy is Java-like, right? And it allows you to replace all of your PL/SQL code. That's exactly what I was saying before. All the 60% reduction of PL/SQL code is coming from there. Again, the line of code reduction, 80% reduction. And now I'm not making this up. Why am I not making this up? The reason is we have seen this in action. We have taken our product lines. So all these capabilities are built in the platform. We have taken our product lines, which is more of a vertical ones, and we have adopted that into the product line. Right? That was a Euphrates 1 release. So that's why the proof in the pudding. So we know there's an 80% reduction in the code. Right? We have seen that. That whole logic now reduces drastically. Third last point, dependency on Oracle, right, reduces as you're retiring more and more PL/SQL code, right? And then the speed at which you can develop now is extremely fast, because all of these pieces of code can be unit tested, because you're using this Groovy construct, which is the Embry construct, right? So this is our low code way of looking at it. You have the user interface, you have taken that and abstracted that, and you've also taken all the logic which is there in our workflow business processes. That also has been abstracted to write it at a higher level, much easier to understand, and reduces your underlying lines of code. Right? Any questions on low code? That's where we draw the line for low code, and I'll come to no code now. Am I going too fast, low? Yes.
It's all very interesting. Do you have practical examples where you show the differences between what it was before and what's the new one, or an example of how this low code is used?
Yes, at the end of the presentation.
Okay, thank you.
And if you pay me more, then I can take you to the court and show it to you. So that depends on how much you want to shell out. Yes. So as I said, we adopted in the product. So in the product, when we adopted, we know what was before and what is now. And then those examples
I
we
know
have.
it's not a question of that, it's the question that the presentation is great, but if I see an example of saying this is what it used to be and this is what it is now, then people can actually have an understanding of how they're going to use it.
So, sir, I've taken that on board. I will speak to a team that are working on the development portal, and we will put examples.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And I'll come to that also. So I'll show you some examples and the developer portal, and we can show you some examples and how you can do it. Yes.
So speed of application development, in terms of ratios, do we have a ratio? Is it
1:10.
Fantastic.
10-time reduction. Less testing, less coding. More assurance, because all these APIs are being tested at the platform level. So you bring more abstraction, that's the beauty, right?
Thank you.
At least 10 times.
The second one's point down, does that change the architecture in any way? Is the app server need to be beefier and the...
We are reducing the load on the database. Now the app server, the way it runs is completely horizontally scalable. So you can actually spring up more JVMs if you want.
Okay.
But right now we are not seeing that need.
Right.
In fact, database always runs slower rather than app tier, because we do a lot of caching also and abstraction. So we are seeing the performance as increase also drastically. So what happens is you have the UI tier, then the application tier, then the database tier. Every validation was going to the database. So now we have brought it to the application tier, which is much faster. So you will see much faster interaction. 3-layer versus 2-layer. Any other questions?
John, just one more question. See, most likely when you're going to go and deploy this in any enterprise, it will have to coexist with many other existing applications. And when they have to talk to it, they would have used typically many other different kinds to integrate. So how does this allow that while still maintaining the low-code construct?
Thank you. I'll come to that. Next slide. Any other questions? Okay. So we have also built out the, it should have been probably done in the end, but anyway, I'll cover this. Content indication service. To your point, Balaji, how do you interact with the system, right? So the same content which you have, the same logic which you have written for the user interface to do the validation, right? To bring in the data, typing in the data, that same API, auto-generated by the platform, is exposed to the outside world. It is a REST API, right? It follows all the open standards. And our connectors, which we are using to interface with other products, right, actually is built such a way that it uses the same BAPI framework, which is a business API framework, right? That's how you would integrate, right? So the low code is happening after you have called the API, right? And the API construct itself is dynamically created, auto-created by the platform. You don't have to hand code and say, well, this should be an API signature. That's how it works. So, in other words, this service allows you to bring data into metric stream or take data out of metric stream through programmatic interface, which is API. Right? As simple as that. Now comes the word, okay, so you say low code, no code, where is the no code part? Now, as of yesterday, we used to actually hand code each of our user interface to duplicate the same validation logic into this API, right? And as I just said, now the platform auto-generates the framework or auto-generates the API. And there was a question, right, what are the methods supported? Is both get, put, and patch, which mean basically you can actually read the data, you can update the data, you can delete the data. All three are supported, right? So each of these APIs has 3 inherent APIs, if you will, right? So for example, if you have an asset creation interface, right? That asset creation form or user interface you have has a corresponding API which is called asset creation, right? Through which you can actually create an asset coming programmatically from outside. Right? That's exactly what this means. Right? It's a very powerful tool because at the end of the day, we believe in next 5 years, people will not be really entering data into the system. The system will actually get data from outside automatically, right? So this whole business of typing the data will probably go away. So that's why more and more you'll see more APIs are getting built out. Today, out of the box, we are very proud to say we have 200 plus APIs already available. GRC specific APIs. Now this is a little bit different from when you say other APIs, because we have other APIs which is interactive between the product and the platform, which is internal. These are external APIs, where you have the full documentation in your developers portal, where you can see all the APIs which has been listed out. Right? And you can use the Postman if you're very technical savvy. You can use Postman to call those APIs to see how it interacts or works. Right? Now, often when you do data migration, you are taking the data out from another system, trying to import it into the metric stream, or do the vice versa, which we call a simplified data upload in our case, where again the same business logic gets invoked. If you have any transition logic, that will also get invoked as you actually start to bring the data into the system. So that is called a simplified data upload. This today, the system will automatically generate the template for you, right? All you got to do is take your existing data, map it to your template, and then you can upload the data. You don't have to write a single line of code, right? So for example, if you have a form extension requirement today, you want to add few fields to the form. Just imagine the world. You have out of the box product, and now you have to add few fields to the form, right? You can use low code, no code to do the validation. You can use the MD framework to put in the logic in the workflow or the business process. The same signature will be auto-generated using the BAPI framework. If you're trying to upload the data now, with those 3 fields, additional fields, you can use the SDU to upload the data. All of that work then can be done in one click. I think after that I need a clap. It's okay. So we are very proud of this. I mean, it really works. You know, we see this is going to bring a quantum change in terms of. All I would say, only 5 minutes. All I would say, we really heard you, right? And this is going to bring a sea change. Sorry.
Just a quick question. Yes, one that you said around being able to add fields into forms really easily. You can kind of do that today through App Studio, but what we can't do is update reports. So would that update the report as well, or would you still need a support team in MetricStream to build that report?
Give us one more release. We're working on it. So today we have released which is called Cross-Product Insight, which allows you to create a data universe, right?
Yeah.
Which I'm not covering in this section, but I'll happy to share that with you. In that, even today, which came out in Euphrates, you can actually include those fields, create a data universe, and you can create any kind of reports you want.
Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
So the business value of this is enormous, as you can see. So the beauty of this is basically we are also using this internally. So what is the beauty of using it internally? That means we are also continuously testing it. So if there are any issues and bugs we are finding, we are fixing it. So since we are using it internally, it actually drastically increases our speed at which we can create more and more features, right? And we want to also share this with the outside world. I will share the slides with you. It's pretty, I would say, no-brainer, right? And I think most of the topics we've already covered. As we talk about integration, you can integrate with any of your internal systems or external products using the same API configurations, right? Okay, so this is the portal, the developers portal, where every API is being talked about. The 200 plus APIs is all documented here. You can actually log in. You can look at the API interface. It actually gives you videos how to use it. So it's a learning portal a self-learning portal, if you will. There was a slide. What missed? Any other questions? So I think there was a question in the back. How do you actually reduce the line of codes? You can see on the left hand side how you record that in JavaScript. We have more examples like this on the portal, and you can see on the right hand side it's like in 2 lines of code with some nice indentations and all within 3 lines of code, but essentially you can write that in 1 line. So that's how you can see on the left hand side the second example where it can be written just in 1 call. right? That's how the code reduction is happening. Okay, maybe I'm on time. Yes, please.
Sorry, there's a question on that. Do you need database access to be able to do that, or can you do that through App Studio or
Through App Studio.
through App Studio?
Absolutely, yes. Any other questions?
Sure, I have one more question.
Sure.
So when you offer to customers the collection of APIs to invoke, do you also agree with them what will be the volumetrics in terms of number of times they can call it, what will be the throughput that you're able to assure, or does that remain relatively flexible?
We think it's instantaneous because this is as a validation logic by field level, right? When you're doing a simplified data upload, that's where we often get this question that if I import now 1 million line of code, you're kicking on the validation, how long does it take? But let's be realistic, right? You can throw hardware to make it simpler, it will be additional cost, total cost of ownership will go down or go up. Rather, if it's a synchronous process, if it takes 10 minutes more, but you're importing 1 million lines of record, which is, I think, it should be fine. So I think it's a trade-off we always have to do between the speed versus how much of hardware you want to throw.
Okay.
Right. But it's very difficult to give you an approximate number. But we do our performance lab testing, which again I said if we adopted this into a product, we did our lab testing. We have very high thresholds when you do the P-lab testing, and all of this has passed in that. So pretty confident that its performance is very good. Any other questions? No? Simran, do you have a question?
No,
No.
I was just coming to close the session.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks so much.